Hello and welcome to episode 10, how Japan's new strategy how Japan's new defense strategy will impact Asia. To understand the sphere of defense and security, we have today with us Dr. Satoru Nagao. Hi Dr. Satoru Nagao. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to join.
Likewise, thank you very much for joining us. So as we'll be touching upon some of the latest updates on Japan's defense strategy and Asia in general, so can you please provide a brief overview of your career, the organizations that you're associated with, and in general, your journey in this sector?
Okay. I need to say I'm Dr. Satoru Nagao. Indeed, my PhD thesis maybe research mainly focusing on India's military strategy. But that's why, because of the recent situation, the Quad, US, India, Japan, Australia, and defense and security related cooperation is a main matter I'm focusing on. So originally, my background is defense and security, but because of this, because of the India's military strategy is a rare topic in Japan, mainly I focusing on this area. And I belong to the Hudson Institute, which is located in the Washington, D.C. in the United States. And in the past, I stay in the Washington, D.C. nearly 3 years. But now I'm the fellow non-resident of the Hudson Institute. And originally I'm Japanese, so I stay in Tokyo now. So from Tokyo, I will explain the situation or reply to your questions in this interview. Thank you very much for giving a chance. I'm very happy to join.
Thank you very much, Dr. Satoru, for providing us this brief overview. I'm really glad as well to have you on this podcast. I have been following you and your analysis through the different mediums, especially through LinkedIn. And I'm really glad you're on the podcast. I'm pretty sure all the audience who will be listening to this episode will be taking away some key updates and you'll be utilizing it in their daily research and analysis. So, yeah, to begin with the podcast, I would like to know Japan has recently increased its military budgets. So, from that perspective, can you please tell us why it has suddenly recorded such an increase in the budget and why it is important for the international security sphere?
Yeah, that's very important. Yes, Japan changed their defense policy from defensive defense to the more active one. So that's why this publishing the new document, National Security Strategy or National Defense Strategy, and one more document, Defense Planning, is a very important document, a very important strategic shift. But background reality is maybe background reality has changed more drastic. Indeed, Japan's policy is trying to catching up this change. When we check the data published by the SIPRI, the think tank in Sweden, from 2011 to 2020, so 1 decade, China increased their military expenditure 76%. But during the same period, Japan increased only 2.4%. And the United States decreased 10% military expenditure. So that's why in this security situation around Japan has changed very drastically. And this is serious when we check the pattern of China's territorial expansion. What happened in the South China Sea indicates interesting pattern of China's territorial expansion. In 1950s, when France withdrew from the region, China took the half of the Paracel Island. In 1970s, when US withdrew from Vietnam after the Vietnam War, China took another half of the Paracel Island. In 1980s, when Soviet troops reduced the number in Vietnam, China took 6 feet of the Spratly Island. In 1990s, when US withdrew from Philippines, China took the Misty Reef. So from this activity of China, we can find one pattern. When China finds power vacuum created by the changing military balance, they took it. So they are safe. So recently we can see the many news related with Russia's aggression in Ukraine. Indeed, when we compare Russia and China, Russia is a pattern of the beggar. When they find a chance, they use the military very fast. But in case of China, China is thief. China steals the territory. That is pattern. So how to deter China's activity? Maintaining military balance is very important. But maintaining military balance demands a budget, because I have already explained 2011 to 2020, China increased their military
Yes.
expenditure 76%. But
Yeah.
so Japan published, next 5 years, we will increase 56% of our defense budget in this new national security strategy. But 56% is less than 76%. So this is not enough. That's why Japan tried to cooperate with other countries to divide China's defense budget to many directions, with India, with Australia, with the United States, or other Southeast Asian, like that is also included this national security strategy. So that's why this is a new national security strategy, but based on the very serious situation in this region. But that is my answer. A little long, but thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, I think this makes sense from the perspective, the way Japan has historically positioned itself, not only in cooperation, in a healthy cooperation with the Western allies, but also with the South Asian countries like India. So, just following up from this point, Japan and US signed a Treaty of Mutual Cooperation and Security back in 1960. So, can you give us a brief overview of what is the motive of this treaty and how it has shaped over time Japan's security strategy?
Okay, in this case, I should explain based on realism. So any country
Yeah.
is not a friend. This realism.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simply said, Japan will not fight against the United States again. That's why Japan want to be the ally of the United States, because the last 2,000-year history, United
Yes.
States is only exceptional country succeeded to occupy Japan as a foreign country. China tried that, failed. Russia tried that, failed. But the United States. That's why United States is exceptional country. Japanese admit they are stronger than us. That's why Japan will not fight against the United States again. That's why Japan will be the US side. This is most important security for Japan. That is the first reason. But at the same time, indeed, Japan itself has a pattern of alliance. Indeed, when we checked Japan's alliance, when Japan allied with the British, Russia was the main threat. To deal with Russia's expansion, we need to ally with the British. So when Japan allied with Germany, what was the reason? The deteriorating relation with the United States was the reason. And so in that time, Japan German occupied many European countries, they are rising. Of course, that was a mistake. But of course, Japan thought that. So when Japan allied with United States, what kind of threat Japan is thinking?
Sure.
So expanding communist in the continent. Soviet, China, Vietnam, Korea, communist country expanding the number and the areas. That was the main threat for Japan. That's why we cooperate with the United States to deter the expansion. That is the main threat. So Japan try to be the balancer and to deter the threat. That is a pattern. That's why Japan choose the US side. But that is the second reason. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think the point that you mentioned about the communist countries that are rising up, I'm coming to that point. But just prior to that, to close the chapter on the US and the India side, so recently we have observed the Quadrilateral Security Group, which is also called as Quad, which has gained significant prominence, which was not actually the case back in the past. So can you tell us how Quad has impacted Japan's position in the international security?
Yeah, indeed, the Indo-Pacific and Quad is the one set, and Japan was the pioneer. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, the address in the Indian Parliament in 2007. That time, in his address, the idea of the Indo-Pacific and Quad both are included in one address. And in 2012, he published one small, short English article, which explains why we need the Quad more clearly. So that's why Shinzo Abe was indeed the pioneer of this idea. So when we check this document, we can find three things, three reasons why he think this Indo-Pacific and Quad is needed in the current world and current policy of Japan. Firstly, the rising region, which is Pacific side and Indian Ocean side, should be the one integrated concept. So Asia Pacific do not include the Indian Ocean region. That's why this concept is needed. So economically, they are rising that time. But at the same time, this region itself is under threat. Should not be the China-dominated region. So that's why the Indo-Pacific, when we check the Indo-Pacific, we can find the countries who has territorial problem with China. All of these countries are included in the Indo-Pacific. And Quad is all great powers in the Indo-Pacific except China. So indeed, this
Yes.
concept counter-China strategy. That is the second reason. And the third reason is, India is most important in this concept because before the Shinzo Abe introduced Indo-Pacific, Asia-Pacific is the concept, do not include India. And Quad, we went checked US, Australia, US and Japan, they are formal allies, so they have many chances to cooperate. So they do not need a Quad. Why they need a Quad? Because they want to talk with India. So indeed, this concept is a concept try to cooperate with India. So that is maybe third reason and a very important part in this concept. So cooperate with India, try to deter China's territorial expansion and maybe making the stable situation to develop in this region. That is a concept of the Indo-Pacific and the Quad. That was the reason, I think.
Yeah, I think this makes sense. I think from this perspective, as far as I see, the United States, I mean, to counter certain things in the South Asian region, India is the country that they have chosen to align with. Fortunately, that was not the case uh, in the past, where India was aligning with the Western values. But I think things are changing, and I think India has to take a stand somewhere down the line where it has to align or create an alliance, at least for a temporary purpose, to counter some of the threats in the Indo-Pacific region. So yeah, just moving ahead in this follow-up line as well. Uh, Coming back to the previous part that you had mentioned about the communism part, the countries which are highly who highly value the communist ideology are rising. So there are rapid military movements we have recorded in the North Korean region. So do you think this is also the reason why Japan is investing heavily in the defense sector now?
Yes, of course. North Korea's missile capability improved very fast pace, that's true. And at the same time, North Korea is a former treaty-based ally of China. China has only one ally, which is North Korea. So, but why China ally with North Korea? Because they are gatekeeper of Beijing. To approach Beijing, yes, North Korea defend the capital of China. So that's why they need North Korea. China needs North Korea. So, but if China and North Korea collaborate their move, what will happen? China can invade Taiwan during North Korea attack South Korea. It could happen. So it will be the two-front war. And that kind of simulation is very important because currently deterrence based on the simulation. So simulation is simulation. But before the war, before the real war has happened, the simulation is one kind of war, and they calculate which side has advantage as a military power. Maybe this is maybe a very important part of the security. So, in this case,
Yes.
what should we do? South Korea need to deal with North Korea. During that time, Japan focusing on Taiwan. Something like that will happen. Anyway, North Korea's military activity and which improves their military capability very fast pace, that will be the big threat. That is
Yes.
maybe simple answer of this question. But if I add one more thing, we are worrying, maybe simply said such kind of things we are worrying. If the North Korea has a long-range missile capability, which can attack the mainland of the United States by nuclear weapon, when
Yes.
North Korea attacks South Korea or Japan, will U.S. come to this region to support South Korea and Japan immediately? That is
Okay.
a little questionable because for United States, South Korea and Japan is a little far. For us, the
Yes.
United States need to spend the life of their soldiers in this region.
Yes.
It's doubtful. So even if there is a national interest, even if the U.S. president want to intervene, without the persuasion of the U.S. voters, they cannot intervene. So in this
Yes.
case, people are worrying, simply worrying. If the U.S. intervene in this region, North Korea can fire the ICBM to attack the United States by nuclear weapon.
Yes.
Is there such kind of maybe value U.S. Need to bet? Such kind of the discussion will happen in the United States, and U.S. intervention will be delayed a little. There are such kind of situations maybe Japan and South Korea are worrying. So that's why North Korea's missile development is a very serious issue for Japan and
Yes.
South Korea, I think. But that is maybe another matter. For Taiwan, also, I have already explained this is also important. I have these are the reason. This is serious.
Okay. Yes, I think we are talking about multiple nations at play in this moment. And considering the multilateralism, do you believe Japan encourages multilateral institutions and how it is helping the country position itself in the international relations sphere?
That is an interesting question. Maybe you are talking about ASEAN NATO or something. In this case, I believe.
Yes.
But if you talk about ASEAN NATO, yeah, it is welcome move for Japan. But at the same time, it is very difficult because Indo-Pacific is a very wide region, very diverse region. For example, if Indonesia includes the sea between islands, size of Indonesia is similar size with EU. So you can imagine how big the Indo-Pacific is. So it is not easy to integrate our efforts. But recently, the situation has developed a very fast pace. Since Russia's aggression in Ukraine, Western countries realize how important NATO is. So in the past, people doubt the importance of NATO, but now people understand how important NATO is. So Japan also cooperate with many allies such as the US, NATO, and the Quad because of this situation.
Yes.
So now it is practical for Japan to cooperate with many nations at the same time. And indeed, allies or partners are very important to decide who will win the competition indeed. When we check the last three competition, for example, the World War I, World War II, or US-Soviet Cold War, which side wins?
Yes.
We can calculate number of countries. Indeed, World War I, 32 countries consist one group, and they won. And loser side is 4. And World War II, 54 versus 8. And the US Soviet Cold War, 54 versus 26. So every time bigger group won the competition. If so, to win the competition with China, to win the competition with Russia, we need to form the bigger group. That is very important.
Yes.
So now ASEAN NATO or NATO expands interest to Asia anyway. We need to form such kind of multilateral cooperation. That is the key to win the competition. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, just actually, I would like to finish this question also, but I think prior to that, just taking a leap back. So Japan and South Korea are preparing to resume security talks, as far as I know from the recent updates. So can you tell us about the relations between these two countries, both from the security dimensions and the defense, not so much from the economic, but especially from the security and defense dimension?
Yes, I have already explained that because the security situation is serious, Japan and South Korea cooperate each other. That is a good move, that's true. But
Okay.
I'm not optimistic in this case. Because for South Korea, anti-Japan policy is very popular. When South
Okay.
Korean government lost their popularity, they need
Yes.
anti-Japan policy. So recently, security environment is so serious, both countries cooperate each other. But in the future, when the South Korean government lose their popularity, they need this card. So we start the anti-Japan card, and the Japan
Yeah.
South Korea cooperation will be collapsed. So
Okay.
that we can expect such kind of situation. That's why Japanese are not so optimistic in this case, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, that brings us to one common point as well. Why we see a lot of Japanese and Indian cooperation going on a several level. So coming to the same point actually, because we have observed historically that South Korea primarily aligns with the Western values when it comes to the international relations. So what are your views on Japan with respect to the alignment with the West? Because I personally have observed always that Japan has an independent perspective, as much as the India has. It aligns with the West for certain things, but it has its independent perspective as well. So from your experience, where does Japan align, and if it is independent, then how it is independent actually? Can you explain this to us?
Japan's independence based on pacifism, which is not intervening any security situation in other countries. So that's why
Yeah.
even if the United Nations peacekeeping operation, Japan hesitate to join, or even if the democracy or autocracy discussion has happened in Myanmar or other countries, Japan hesitate to move or impose sanctions against them. That was the pattern in the past. Recently, this kind of one kind of isolationism, not the we should not call this the pacifism in the international base definition. So that's why the Japan tried to do not intervene in any situation in the other country in the world. That was the traditional pacifism Japan has done. That's why Japan is a little independent. But now Japan start to realize the cooperation with other countries is very important. And to cooperate, we need to intervene in some conflict in other countries. For example, the Russia's aggression to Ukraine, that we need to stand with Ukraine. Or in case of Myanmar, we should support democratic movement. So Japan has changed. Japan tries to support Taiwan now. So many things. So that's why Japan is changing. So
Yes.
Japan will export weapons which suffers invasion from other countries in the future. So South Korea export weapons to Poland. Poland donate weapons to Ukraine. That kind of situation has happened. Because South Korea can export weapons and Japan cannot export weapons. But Japan will export a weapon. In this case, Japan will join the Western move to defend democracy. So Japan is so in this meaning, I think Japan was not independent, just hesitated.
Okay.
That is my opinion.
Yeah. That's a good explanation, actually. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
I think we have covered most of the things, I believe. And if something is there, definitely we can definitely create a second episode or a follow-up episode later in this year, for sure, based on the response on of this episode. And as we are approaching the end, so Dr. Satoru, I would like to know, for your message to the future generation as an international expert. What message would you like to give to the future generation stepping into this field of defense, security, research, and analysis?
That maybe such kind of message should be optimistic, but maybe my message is just analysis of the current situation for the future. So a little include the pessimistic side too.
Yeah.
After the Cold War, the people in the world have enjoyed the global trade, and they underestimate the security, national border, this related with the nation. But
Yes.
recent US-China competition, COVID-19 pandemic, Russia's aggression Ukraine, returns the age indeed. So now our government is regained the power, and the defense industry is regaining power too. Winston
Yes.
Churchill wrote in his book, The World War II, about the development of the defense industry. First year, they produce nothing. Second year, they produce a little. Third year, many they produce. And fourth year, they produce fraud, looks like fraud. So
Yes.
if this process we can apply now, so currently the Russia's aggression entered the second year. This means that the defense industry will produce a little this year. But in the future, third year and fourth year will come. This means that the defense industry will produce many or flood of the products. So if
Yes.
the war will continue some more years, or if the US-China competition will escalate more and some years later, we will enter the age of defense industry, I think. So that's when the expert or the people want to be the expert, want to research this area, we must not underestimate the national security. Is my message. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Nagao, that we had you on the podcast, and this has been a great episode. I believe a lot of listeners of ours will be taking not only the key messages, but a lot of inputs that you have also provided, along with the references to the several political dimensions, the defense dimensions as well. So thank you very much again for coming on this episode and your precious time. We'll definitely try to have you again on the episode, possibly down the line in this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It is an honor for me.
Yes.